The Abandoned Motel. One chilly evening, I found myself delivering a pizza to an abandoned motel on the outskirts of town. The place had a reputation for being haunted, but I figured it was just a silly rumor. As I approached the motel, the wind howled through the broken windows, creating an eerie symphony. The overgrown bushes seemed to whisper secrets as I made my way to the entrance. The neon sign flickered sporadically, casting an eerie, unstable glow on the worn-out pavement. Its light was just enough to illuminate the area around it, casting eerie shadows that danced and stretched in the darkness. I knocked on the door of the room, listed on the order, my knuckles echoing through the unsettling silence that enveloped the place. A creaking sound followed, and the door swung open slowly, revealing a dimly lit interior. The air inside was damp and musty, carrying the scent of decades, old memories. I hesitated for a moment before stepping over the threshold, a chill running down my spine like icy fingers. I called out, "Pizza delivery," but my words seemed to get swallowed up by the oppressive atmosphere. Goosebumps formed on my arms as I stepped into the room, the air feeling heavy and suffocating. The flickering light bulb hanging from the ceiling swung gently, casting eerie shadows that danced across the faded wallpaper. As I set the pizza box on the rickety table, I heard a faint whisper, so soft that it was almost imperceptible. It was as if the walls themselves were trying to communicate, to tell me something that I couldn't quite understand. My heart raced, and I turned to leave, only to find the door had closed behind me. Panic surged through me as I tugged on the doorknob, but it wouldn't budge. It was as if the door had a mind of its own, keeping me trapped inside this eerie motel room. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart. Maybe the door was just stuck, I tried to convince myself. Then I heard footsteps. Slow, deliberate footsteps, coming from the bathroom at the far end of the room. The sound was almost rhythmic, like a heartbeat in the silence. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end, and I could barely breathe as I strained to listen. The bathroom door creaked open, revealing nothing but darkness within. A figure emerged, its features obscured by shadows. My voice quivered as I stuttered, "Who's there?" My heart pounded so loudly in my chest that I was sure whoever, or whatever, was there could hear it. No answer. The figure stepped closer, moving with an eerie grace that sent shivers down my spine. I could make out a pale face and hollow eyes, eyes that seemed to hold a weight of sorrow and despair from another world. My pulse pounded in my ears as I pressed myself against the closed door, my fingers trembling as I continued to pull at the knob. The figure lifted a bony hand, its fingers stretching toward me like ghostly tendrils. My breath caught in my throat as I let out a strangled scream, a scream that seemed to fill the room and drown out all other sound. But just as suddenly as it had appeared, the figure dissolved into mist, vanishing before my eyes like a mirage. The door swung open, and I stumbled out into the night, gasping for air as if I had been underwater for far too long. I jumped into my car and slammed the door shut, my heart still racing like a runaway train. I peeled out of the motel parking lot, my tires screeching against the pavement. As I drove away, I glanced in my rearview mirror, half expecting to see the figure standing there, watching me from the window. But there was nothing, just the abandoned motel fading into the distance. My hands gripped the steering wheel tightly as I tried to shake off the fear that still gripped me. That night, I learned that some rumors held more truth than I was willing to admit. The desolate cabin. One rainy night, I received an order to deliver a pizza to a remote cabin deep in the woods. The directions were vague, and the forest seemed to swallow up the narrow dirt road leading to the cabin. The rain pelted against my windshield, and I navigated through the darkness. Finally, I arrived at the cabin, its windows dark and foreboding. The rain made the whole scene feel even more isolated. I knocked on the door, my knuckles echoing through the quiet woods. After a tense moment, the door creaked open, revealing an elderly man with hollow eyes. He didn't say a word, just gestured for me to come inside. I handed him the pizza, feeling a shiver run down my spine as he stared at me with a haunted look. I cleared my throat and mumbled the total, but he didn't respond. Suddenly, he reached out and grabbed my arm with a grip that felt unnaturally strong. His eyes locked onto mine and he whispered, "They're coming." My heart raced as I tried to pull away, but his grip tightened like a vise. He released me abruptly, and I stumbled backward, nearly falling. Without another word, he closed the door, leaving me standing alone in the rain. Soaked darkness. I rushed back to my car, heart pounding, and looked back at the cabin one last time. I saw shadows moving inside, shadows that seemed to be watching me. I peeled out of there. The image of the old man's haunted eyes burned into my mind. I couldn't shake the feeling that something sinister lurked in those woods. One ordinary night, I got an order to deliver pizzas to an apartment complex. As I approached the building, I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was off. The hallway was dimly lit, and the air felt heavy with unease. I knocked on the door of the specified apartment and waited, the seconds ticking by in tense silence. Finally, the door cracked open, revealing a disheveled woman with wild eyes. She grabbed the pizzas from me without a word and handed me a crumpled wad of bills. As I counted the money, she stared past me into the hallway, her expression one of terror. I asked if everything was okay, but she just shook her head and whispered, "They're here." Confused and uneasy, I turned to look down the hallway. Shadows seemed to dance at the edges of my vision, and a chill ran down my spine. The woman slammed the door shut, leaving me standing there, my heart racing. As I walked back to the elevator, I felt a presence behind me, as if someone was breathing down my neck. I glanced over my shoulder, but there was no one there. The elevator dinged open, and I stepped inside. My heart still pounding. The doors began to close, but then they jerked back open suddenly. I stared at my reflection in the mirrored doors, and behind me, I saw a figure, a shadowy figure with empty eyes and a sinister grin. I yelled and jabbed the elevator button repeatedly, and finally, the doors closed, taking me away from that haunting sight. I stumbled out of the elevator once I reached the ground floor, my whole body trembling. The memory of that figure still haunted my thoughts as I drove away from the apartment complex, vowing to never return after dark again. The haunted apartment.